I faked being rich to date a millionaire. Turned out he was broke too. I never thought lying about money would get me into the deepest mess of my life. It started with a glass of overpriced champagne and a borrowed dress that cost more than my monthly rent. I was at a charity gala I had no business attending. I got in by helping a friend cater the event, then snuck onto the guest list by swapping name tags with some woman who left early. I told myself it was harmless. Just a night to pretend. That's when I met him, Blake Langston, tall, effortlessly confident, with that lazy smirk rich men wear like designer cologne. He walked straight up to me while I was pretending to examine an abstract sculpture I didn't understand, and said, "You look like you hate that as much as I do." We talked for hours. Or rather, he talked, and I played the part, the art-loving, fashion-forward daughter of a private investor from Palm Beach. I mimicked the way wealthy girls talked on TikTok. I used phrases like "summering in the Hamptons" and "daddy's latest project in Dubai." And Blake bought it. Or maybe he wanted to. He asked for my number. I gave him the one tied to the second phone I used for Poshmark side hustles. We texted. He sent selfies from private jets. I sent carefully framed photos in front of other people's houses in Beverly Hills. Fake it till you make it, right? Here's the thing. I wasn't trying to scam him. I didn't ask for money. I wasn't a gold digger. I was just tired. Tired of working 3 jobs, of feeling invisible, of dating broke guys who slept on futons and called that minimalist living. So when Blake invited me to Paris for the weekend, I said yes. I didn't have a passport. I had $212 in my bank account. I told him I'd meet him there instead, that I was already in Europe for business. Then I maxed out a credit card to buy a fake itinerary from a luxury travel agent just to keep up the illusion. Back in LA, I Googled how to act rich. I studied designer logos, learned wine terms, memorized which fork to use during dinner. Every night, I practiced a British accent in case someone called me out on my background. I even hired a wardrobe stylist off Craigslist to polish my look. She ended up becoming my best friend and the only person who knew the truth. I was living a double life. My days were spent managing inventory at a dusty thrift store. My nights were spent FaceTiming Blake from the balcony of a friend's penthouse I was cat-sitting, pretending it was mine. I always wore sunglasses inside, claimed it was eye fatigue from too many late-night meetings. It was insane and addictive. And then things got serious. Blake said he wanted me to meet his parents. "They're flying in from Monaco," he said. "We're doing a weekend in Napa." Panic. I couldn't afford gas to Napa, let alone a weekend there. But I said yes, smiled, and pretended like I had a stylist packing for me. The night before the trip, I cried in the thrift store's storage room, sitting between broken coat racks and a box of outdated Halloween costumes. I was in too deep. I almost backed out, almost texted Blake that I was called away on a last-minute investment deal. But something in me, maybe pride, maybe madness, made me go. And that's when I learned the truth. We arrived at the Vineyard estate. It looked suspiciously like a rental. His parents never showed. Blake said they were delayed, but I saw the panic in his eyes. He offered me wine from a bottle I recognized from Trader Joe's. I played along, just like always. Then I went to the bathroom and saw his wallet on the counter. I know I shouldn't have, but I peeked. Inside, a used Metro card, a receipt for ramen noodles, and a debit card from a local credit union. No Amex Black. No gold-plated business cards. Just real life. Blake wasn't a millionaire. He was pretending, just like me. and I had no idea what the hell to do next. I stared at the contents of Blake's wallet for way too long. My stomach twisted with something worse than guilt: recognition. The same kind of receipt, the same kind of debit card, the same cheap plastic reality I had tried so hard to leave behind. He wasn't a millionaire. He was like me, pretending. I should have walked out right then, or confronted him, or at least said something. But when I stepped out of the bathroom, he was already pouring more wine, wearing that charming practiced smile, like nothing was wrong. So I sat back down, and I played along. It felt like we were actors trapped in a bad improv show, both terrified the audience would catch on. He made up stories about his family's vineyard in Italy. I nodded and said, "Oh, my father has property in Tuscany too." We were two liars tangoing through a fantasy, and part of me was weirdly impressed. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything: the fake flights, the luxury lies, the way he'd always dodge specific questions. The fact that neither of us had ever truly asked the other for proof. We were too busy selling the illusion and buying it. In the morning, I decided to test him. Over breakfast, I casually mentioned a fake family estate in Aspen and how our private chef used to serve truffle omelets. Blake didn't even blink. He doubled down, saying his father once bought a racehorse just to name it after his ex. We were both so full of it, I could almost laugh. Almost. Instead, I felt this bizarre mix of betrayal and relief. Betrayal because, how dare he lie? Relief because I wasn't the only liar. We drove back to LA that evening, awkward silence stretching between us. I stared out the window and wondered if he knew. If he'd peeked into my wallet at some point. If he saw through the rich girl act and just decided to mirror it back at me. A few days passed. We didn't talk. I waited for the guilt to push me into confessing, but it didn't. It just sat there like a weight on my chest. Then Blake texted, "Want to come over? I'll cook." 3 emojis, a wine glass, a fire, and a wink. I didn't know what to expect when I showed up to his apartment. For one, it wasn't a penthouse. It was a tiny studio in Koreatown with a cracked mirror by the door and a futon that doubled as a bed. But it was clean, cozy, real. Blake looked nervous. His hair was still damp, his shirt wrinkled like he'd pulled it out of the laundry basket. And for the first time since I met him, he looked honest. "Look," he said, before I could speak, "I need to tell you something." I raised my eyebrows. "Me too." He laughed. It was the first genuine laugh I'd heard from him. Not the smooth, curated chuckle he used at cocktail parties. This one was raw. "You go first," he said. "No, you," I insisted. So we flipped a coin. "I'm not rich," Blake said simply. "I never was. I work at a car rental desk at LAX. My friend lets me borrow his BMW sometimes, and I take pictures in front of planes that aren't mine." I blinked, then I laughed. He looked startled, then confused. "Are you okay?" "I'm so okay," I said, "because I'm not rich either. I work at a thrift store. My dad's not an investor. He's a mechanic in New Jersey." Blake stared at me like I'd just confessed to being a Russian spy. "Wait, seriously?" I nodded, and then we both laughed, like really laughed. The kind of laugh that makes your ribs hurt. The kind that only happens when the masks fall off and you're finally seen. After the laughter died down, there was silence. But it wasn't awkward anymore. It was peaceful. "I thought you were way out of my league," he admitted. I snorted. "I thought you were." He made spaghetti with canned sauce. We ate on the floor. No fancy wine, no expensive forks, just paper plates and 2 people who finally stopped pretending. It should have been the happy ending, but it wasn't. because 2 weeks later, something happened that changed everything. I got a DM on Instagram. It was from a blue check model I recognized from Blake's feed. "Hey," she wrote. "Not sure if you're still seeing Blake. Just wanted to let you know. He tried the same rich guy act on me last year. Be careful. He's complicated." I stared at the message, and the tiny voice in my head whispered, "What if this wasn't his first con? What if he's not done pretending?" I stared at that DM like it was a warning from the universe. The message was polite, almost too polite, but between the lines, I could feel the weight of it. This wasn't just an ex-girlfriend being dramatic. There was a chill in her tone, a softness that sounded like someone who'd been burned before, but didn't want to see it happen to someone else. I didn't respond right away. I didn't want to believe it. Not after that night on the floor. Not after spaghetti and honesty and stupid paper plates. But once the seed of doubt is planted, it grows fast. I went back to Blake's Instagram, looked closer. The yacht photo? The name on the side didn't match the location he'd tagged. The jet, the same exact model, appeared on a rental site for influencers. The fancy dinners, the designer clothes, the quick trip to Monaco, all smoke and mirrors. And now, knowing what I knew, I saw the pattern. Carefully cropped photos, no consistent background, always posing, never present. And me? I'd fallen for it, because I'd been doing the same damn thing. But there was a difference. I wasn't using people. Blake, it turned out, kind of was. I met up with the girl who messaged me. Her name was Jessa. She was tall, sharp, and wore sunglasses indoors. Not for fashion, but for self-protection, I think. Over coffee, she told me everything. They dated for 4 months. He told her he was a startup investor, always between deals. Borrowed money the few times, just till his offshore account cleared. Said he'd pay her back. He never did. She said she found out he was living out of his car for a while. That he'd charmed his way into rich social circles using fake watches and charisma. That he was a chameleon, could become whoever he needed to be in the moment. He never hurt me physically, she said, but emotionally, he made me feel like I was crazy, like I was the liar. I left that coffee shop feeling sick. It wasn't about the money. It was about the manipulation, about the way Blake played a role, not to survive, but to seduce, to get things, validation, cash, access. And suddenly, our story wasn't so romantic anymore. It was a cautionary tale. I confronted him the next day, not with anger, just questions. I told him I knew, about Jessa, about the lies, about how deep this whole thing went. He didn't deny it. He just looked at me, eyes empty, and said, "I thought you were doing it too." I said, "I was, but not like that." He nodded. "I don't know who I am without the act anymore." That broke me more than I expected, because I understood. I remembered what it felt like to pretend so hard that you forgot what your real voice sounded like. To wrap yourself in someone else's skin and hope the world clapped for the performance. But at least I'd stopped. At least I'd found the line. He hadn't. I walked out, blocked his number, deleted the photos, donated the fake designer clothes, and for the first time in months, I let myself be ordinary. Not glamorous, not wealthy, just real. Now, I work at the thrift store full-time. I started a small side blog where I write about class, perception, and the weird culture of pretending we're richer than we are. I don't post fake vacations anymore. I don't zoom in on other people's luxury and try to copy-paste it into my feed. And I haven't dated since Blake, not because I'm afraid, but because I'm still figuring out who I am, without the filters, the lies, the borrowed names. Maybe one day I'll meet someone else who's real, who knows who they are without the performance. And maybe, when that happens, I'll recognize them. Because now I finally recognize myself.